Aloha Hawaii. This is Potpourri and you are listening to Hawaiian Potpourri. Welcome to the program, or welcome back to the program. Today is the 6th day of October in the year 2012, and the program name is Hawaiian Potpourri, broadcasting from the top of the Chinese Cultural Plaza here in Honolulu, Hawaii. It's 33 minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock. In the earlier hour, we just spoke about essentially two things. One is boycotts of organizations that operate in tax havens, and if you have a comment with regards to that as a possible idea that we could be pushing, I guess, to bring about some sensibility to those people like Bain Capital that escape paying corporate income taxes or any kind of taxes, avoidance of taxes by dumping your funds in that area. So I thought it was a good idea, and if you have a comment with regards to that, you can give me a call. Telephone number here is 524-1080, and let's take a chance and see if our telephone lines are in fact working appropriately. Other things that have come before me is an article that is from Colette Costner, and I thought this was somewhat interesting. You know, there's a guy named Daniel Ortega who is president of Nicaragua. He had been president of Nicaragua previously at a time when I traveled to Central America. I acted as a guarantor of a peace conference that was going on between an organization known as Mizurasata, which represented three Indian groups, the Mosquito, the Sumo, and the Rama Indians of the Atlantic coast, and they were in a fight with the government, with Ortega's government, and I forget the name of it. The Ortega government had fought against the Sandinista government had taken over, or was it the Sandinista government? The details I've forgotten now. But I traveled to Bogota to participate in the observation of the peace talks between the two governments, and Daniel Ortega was president of the government at that time. Anyway, that was about, 25 years ago. Since that time, he lost the election for presidency, and subsequent to that has recently been re-elected as president. So the news comes out of Nicaragua, and Nicaragua is taking a position that they are disassociating themselves with what has been previously known as the School of the Americas. After a meeting on September 4 with international peace activists from the School of America's Watch, the NICANet, President Daniel Ortega announced that Nicaragua would withdraw its troops from the Western Hemisphere Institute for Security Cooperation, formerly and more widely known as the School of the Americas, a combat training school located in Fort Benning, Georgia. The WINSEC is notorious, this is the school, the WINSEC is notorious for training Latin American military personnel in techniques of repression, including human rights violations such as torture, forced disappearance, and selective assassination. Although 4 countries in South America have already withdrawn troops from WINSEC, Argentina, Bolivia, Uruguay, and Ecuador, Nicaragua is the first Central American country to do so. Since its founding in 1949, the school has graduated approximately 64,000 alumni, including some of Latin America's most notorious dictators, generals, and soldiers. Among the latest to be connected with the school is a recently sentenced Pedro Pimentel Rios, a Guatemalan soldier sentenced to 6,060 years for the Dos Ides massacre of 1982, as well as Rito Alejo del Rio, the Colombian general, recently sentenced to 25 years for murder. Graduates of the school have also been connected to the Honduran coup of 2009. I think that even there you're soft pedaling what the school has really done. They overthrew, what was his name in the Panama, the General Torrijos, was that his name? And they had trained Noriega, and after Noriega became the head of state, they overthrew Noriega as well. The SOA, or School of the Americas, is a symbol of death, a symbol of terror, President Ortega said. We have been gradually reducing our numbers of troops at the SOA, sending only 5 last year and none this year. We have entered a new phase, and we will not continue to send troops to the SOA. This is the least we can do. We have been its victims. In addition to withdrawing its troops from WINSEC, Nicaragua made another important stride in its new phase of autonomy. Along with other countries of the Bolivarian Alliance for the Americas, that's called ALBA, the country pulled out of the Inter-American Treaty of Reciprocal Assistance, a military pact of the Organization of American States that is dominated by U.S. interests. That's the OAS. In his meeting with I understand also, and this is somewhat complicated. It was my understanding that the U.S. was not a member of the OAS, although it is very dominant in that organization. In his meeting with the international delegation, Ortega stressed the importance of the growing unity and support among Latin American nations, according to SOAW organizer and delegate Lisa Sullivan. She went on to point out that the move was, quote, still not sufficient to allow Nicaragua to be totally independent of the U.S., a nation that continues to punish the country for any slight step out of line by withholding their funds while also blocking other international funds destined for Nicaragua. Despite these challenges, Nicaragua's gains in sovereignty are fueling progress by solidarity movements. Activists from around the country are gearing up for the annual protest and vigil at the gates of WINSEC in Fort Benning, Georgia, on November 16th to the 18th. This gathering is a celebration of resistance against economic and military repression and serves as a spiritual homecoming for peace and justice advocates throughout the Americas. So, this is a very interesting news that now there is this greater focus on the School of the Americas. That's the school that has trained a lot of the terrorists that have been carrying out their programs in Central and South America. And that is the school that I've oftentimes spoken about, citing George Bush's claim that wherever there is terrorism and schools or cells of training terrorists, that the U.S. will be attacking those destinations. I said that if that's the case, they should first turn their guns and attention to Fort Benning, Georgia, because this is very blatantly where the CIA has been training these terrorists to overthrow countries and follow the bidding of the United States. And now it's good to see that Nicaragua, along with 4 other countries, have stood up and says, okay, that's it. We're not going to participate with that anymore. Okay. If you have any comments or questions with regards to any of the matters that I have just shared with you, our telephone number here is 524-1080, 524-1080. Give me a call. We'll put you on the radio and see what you have to say with regards to these items. I told you earlier that this week I had attended the convention put on by the, what is the name of it, CNHA. And Right now, I cannot remember the name of that organization. It's a not-for-profit organization that has put together, this was the 11th year in which they put together this convention in which they gather many different Hawaiian organizations or Hawaiian-related organizations, and they talk about funding opportunities, they talk about what's happening in politics and how it is affecting people, and they're also making resolutions to guide further action for the year of many of the organizations, recommending to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, State Council of Hawaiian Homestead Association is also very active, and many other organizations. So it's quite a get-together of organizations that essentially not limited, how should I put it, the organizations may not necessarily be limited to this particular approach, but the approach taken at the convention is generally looking within the United States and to see how they can access a lot of resources, or how to change policies within the U.S. government, how to access resources both from the government as well as from foundations and other philanthropic monies into Hawaii. So for that purpose, I think it's an excellent organization. It also brings about new information on what is happening within governments, what new programs are coming down the pike, and how people can access these new programs and what organizations are working on these things. I was invited to join and to attend one particular aspect of that conference, and it dealt with health services, and I received, along with 3 other people, an award for what was called a Lifetime Achievement Award for our work in health services. Dennis Kawahi from Queen Liliuokalani Children's Center, I think he has retired, but he had been associated with the center, the Oahu section of the center, for many years, was given an award very similar to mine. And so was Puni Kekaoha, I believe her last name is. She's very active in the Waimanalo, I'm sorry, not the Waimanalo, in the Papakolea area with her organization and the development of community activities in that area. And Kawahine, I've forgotten what your, Ohelo, and I'm assuming it's still Ohelo. Kawahine, who had headed the Waimanalo Community Health Center, the Comprehensive Health Center in Waimanalo for many years, and myself having headed the Halena'o Pono, the Waianae Coast Community Mental Health Center. So all 4 of us received a paddle and a citation. So that was a reason for my attending, the main reason for attending the conference, and I did spend time listening to some of the other activities there. And so I want to comment on 2 things that I would like to share with you. One is when they asked if anyone, or they invited us to share a word or 2. And so we all spoke, and it was quite brief, and I must say I did speak briefly. You may not believe me, but I did speak. To me, or from my side of the podium, it was brief. And so what I said was I have 2 words that I would like to share, and the one word is die, D-I-E, and the other word is Ola, O-L-A. And so, and you've heard me explain this many times, so I'll do it very quickly. DI stands for domination, individualism, and exclusion. And Ola, is contrasted to DI, stands for Olu Olu rather than domination, which is a more softer approach of relating to others. Instead of individualism, the contrary Potpourri was lokahi, working together as a team, as a family, in large groups or in groups. And in contrast to exclusion, it was always aloha, to be inclusive with a sense of compassion, humanity, and the rest. So those letters form the acronym OLA, or OLA, as opposed to DAI. OLA, of course, in the Hawaiian and many Polynesian languages, stand for life and stands for health. And my comments were that if we are hopeful of creating a more healthful environment for our people and for all people, we need to take on the challenge of switching our own thinking and switching the society's formal systems from DAI systems to OLA systems. Until we make that fundamental switch, we will continue operating in the public, operating with one another, operating in the formal system under a DIE system, which is killing us. And unless we become more healthy, more life-giving, in better association with one another, the whole system will sink. And so that was essentially my message. The other thing that I observed and wanted to share with you is this concept. Well, sometimes we work continuously with a particular perspective, and we don't even question where we had come to that perspective, but it becomes a goal which we unquestioningly proceed towards. In this case, that goal is housing. To provide housing for our people and for the society. Individual housing. Housing that somehow meets what we have in our heads as the appropriate and adequate house for every one of us, into family units, into individual homes, homes that will meet the architectural and engineering requirements that comes from across the sea, standards that are brought here or adopted by us that came from Middle America. So the architectural and engineering standards, of course, they are good for their safety standards, but those are, in my view, not the only safety standards that is necessary. And there are many other standards by which we as Hawaiian people and many other people from whatever villages they may have come from were as well saved and not as expensive to create homes. Secondly, and many of these rules are determined by HUD standards. You know, every child is required to have a certain space, living space in the bedroom. The bedroom has to be of a certain dimension, etc., etc. These kinds of standards that come from HUD, which is a housing and urban development requirement, so that if you have a loan from a bank, it has to meet the HUD requirement, which immediately shoots up the cost of housing. And we have just accepted these standards, accepted the value of individual homes for every family as a goal. And I've begun to question the wisdom of that goal, especially given our economic situation, given the fact that we are not going to be able to meet everyone's needs, and that it is not necessarily the case that every household needs a home. But there are other living conditions and other shelter conditions and other safety and health conditions that can be created to meet the needs of people to live in a healthy way, to live in a safe way. So rather than establishing a home as necessarily the objective, I think the objective should be reviewed. What are the objectives for the life of, as Gandhi would have put it, a hungry child? He once said that to plan for a national economy, one should see it through the eyes of a hungry child. And I would say that even as we look at housing and appropriate and necessary housing, we should see it through the eyes and the needs of a hungry individual. And what are those needs? 1, safety. 2, appropriate shelter. And it's not necessarily in this order. I'm just trying to think out these necessities. Appropriate shelter. 3, relationship among those who you commune with or you live with, that are healthy relationships, safe relationships. And then added to all of that, if you expand your living accommodations, you would like to have privacy, of course, and you would like to have, because you want a healthy environment, you would need appropriate disposal of human waste, appropriate places to cook your food, cleanliness. That's all part of the health and safety issues. So those are basic things that can be provided in individual homes, but they can also be provided in other architectural and engineering creations that is not necessarily a home, in which people can share the common use of some of these areas. So the objective should be to provide for that safety, to provide for some privacy among family units, to provide for a clean place to take a bath, to take care of your toiletries, to do your cooking, to have some sense of privacy and safety in your personal belongings. But it need not be in a sheltered environment. It can be out in the open with appropriate covers whenever it rains or when the heat comes in. Trees have been seen as very appropriate shade from sunlight. In fact, they're far, far better than tents, because you have the free flow of winds and you still have the shade. However, when it rains, you may want to put something up to provide the stopping of the rain from coming upon the people and their living items. But there are many ways that we can design living spaces for human beings, and it's not necessarily by an individual house. You know, the idea of an individual house comes from a very old concept, and it may go all the way back to thousands of years ago, where people had lived in houses who had the necessary natural environment and the ability to construct these homes. But that's not the only way of living. You had many people who lived in a nomadic condition, and you know, tree houses themselves also afford some measure of shade and safety and the rest. In Hawaii, we have a new expression of housing, and they are called condominium units. And this isn't something that comes from a very old idea. Those are more recent, based on new construction material, new ways of comprehending how spaces can be owned, so that while land can be shared, what you do is you purchase a private property of airspace, and you build within that airspace, and therefore you have your particular unit. Now that's an expansion of what we can consider for shelter purposes. And I'm not saying that's the only expansion. What about some uses of private property and sharing the time use? Or what about sharing a common area for cooking, a common area for a playground, private areas for sleeping, and places to keep your goods in, and families and relations and others can gather together and share in the caring of children, in the schooling of children, in the health care of one another, and creating these different styles of communes, so that families themselves, as they expand, can expand beyond familial lines and can expand into the broader meaning of ohana, as the Hawaiians have used and many other traditions have used, to expand your family, so that children, as they are raised by many different hands and eyes and given loving care, of course you want to be sure that the care is loving. And there's no guarantee that the loving care can only arise when there is a direct lineal relationship. At times, and we have seen many of that direct lineal relationship can create abuse of elders, abuse of children, abuse of spouses, and the rest. But in a broader, general, common living environment, perhaps we can develop a different system of living together. And we provide safe environments for many people. What I'm suggesting is that at least we should expand our visions, our thoughts into these areas, so that just as we have public parks now, because families do not have the large enough properties to have their own swing or their own playground, many people living in these concrete caves up in the air, in apartments, in condominiums. So you develop the concept of a shared place to recreate yourself in the public parks. Well, we can expand that idea and have a larger shared area. I know it takes some adaptation or adoption or some changes in the mindset. But if we are going to meet our particular needs, I am suggesting that we expand our vision into these other areas. Okay, enough said. I see my time is running out.
Kaulana na pua o Hawaiian, Kupa ama hope o ka aina, Iki mai ka elele o ka loko ino, Pala pala anunu me ka paka. Pane mai Hawaii moku o ke ave, Koku ana honoa o Pilani, Ka ko'o mai kaua I o mano, Pa'apu me ke one o ka